Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Mobile Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. Here with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, as we're speaking now on Friday, it seems as if the next round of the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine will take place in Istanbul on Monday. That's the current state of play. But everything else is still up in the air because what we had been led to expect was that this would be a bilateral meeting between the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. And yet, General Keith Kellogg blurted out on an interview on ABC News, and I want to show some of that in a minute because he said some amazing things there, that in attendance will be, he will be there, the British will be there, the French will be there, and the Germans will be there. And that kind of seems very, very
Well, I mean,
bizarre.
This is Keith Kellogg, everyone. They might be there, but
Exactly. So we should
maybe.
leave it exactly.
I mean, Kellogg is in his own little private Idaho little universe there. Okay.
Exactly. But at the moment, the Ukrainians are demanding from the Russians, demanding that they hand over their memorandum. You know, each side is supposed to present a memorandum.
They're stalling. They're stalling.
Yeah, exactly. Of the outcome, the final what the outcome of a settlement should be look like. So, the Ukrainians allegedly have presented their memorandum, though the Russians have said that they haven't received it. The Americans claim that they've seen it, but the Russians haven't seen it, and the Ukrainians are demanding that the Russians present their memorandum. The Russians are saying, no, we'll present the memorandum in Istanbul, and it's perfectly reasonable because if the Russians were to present the memorandum now, it would all be leaked within 10 minutes. It would be all over the
court of public opinion, right?
Right, and then everyone was saying, exactly. But I want to just take a look at this interview with Keith Kellogg, and of course this was with ABC News, and as always, when you're talking to a journalist, British, American, French, German, the only one question is, what are you going to do about Putin? How, when are you going to impose sanctions? When are you going to really get tough with Putin? That's the only thing. They have no interest in anything else. What would constitute peace? How would we, what would the final terms of a settlement? Anything like that. None of that. What are you going to do about Putin? So let's just watch a little bit of this interview with Kellogg. And
war in Ukraine on day one. We're now 128 days into his presidency, and he's had an Oval Office blow-up, with Ukrainian President Zelensky that we won't forget, including a social media showdown with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And now it appears that a ceasefire deal could be...
I want to just say, by the by, it drives me up the wall. Why can't they pronounce his name? It's Putin, not Putin. Let's get Putin.
Or Putin.
Putin. Oh yeah.
Putin.
It's not that hard. This is your job. You're supposed to be able to speak.
It's clearly. 2 syllables, George.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And I don't know what Goldilocks' name here is, but I
don't know who she is.
Ceasefire.
Yes, that's right. It's all that. Yeah, the ceasefire.
It's all about Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Further away than ever. Well, Keith Kellogg, President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, criticized the Russians on X this week, writing, President Donald Trump is working to stop this war and end the killing. We await receipt of the Russian memorandum that you promised a week ago. Ceasefire now. So,
can you stop, George, real quick?
Everyone.
Okay. Let's look at this here, everyone. Who's we? Is the United States a co-belligerent in the conflict, or is it or isn't?
Right.
I mean, this is a bilateral meeting in Istanbul. So, I mean, Keith Kellogg, I'm sorry that you have soggy, wet cornflakes, but it's not for you.
You're absolutely right. And here again, Kellogg is just shooting his mouth off because Trump hasn't said that. Trump has expressed exasperation. We'll come to that, but he has never identified himself with the cause of Ukraine. He has. Kellogg has. When he talks, like just as you said, we await. It sounds as if you are a part of the Zelensky government.
And again, everyone, there's no self-awareness
Right.
here at all. Everything's in the passive voice. There's no past. There's no antecedent.
Right.
And I thought Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg retired. I thought this was Biden's war. You work for the president of the United States, so it's his war, right? By
Right.
your own words.
Right. That's right. That's right. He doesn't seem to listen to what Trump says. And this is, and I'm so surprised that he's survived all this time. Marco Rubio, he listens to what Trump says. He knows exactly what Trump is saying, and he never deviates from the line Trump takes. Kellogg is just simply going off and making all these statements, and I mean, like under whose authority, under whose auspices are you going around saying this?
And before you continue, actually, you've just kind of preempted everything that I really have to say about this, is that after repeated fiascos, there is no reason to believe, everyone, that the Trump administration has a coherent policy at all. Even at the second bilateral meeting, which Trump was very enthusiastic about, you have to let that take on some kind of organic growth on its own. By letting Kellogg and others get involved, you undermine your own position.
Right. No, I think that's it. I think this is absolutely destructive, and that's why I don't see any purpose to it.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. We gave you the punchline way too early in the podcast.
He joins me live in studio right now. General, good to see you again.
Sure, it's good to be with you.
Well, let's start with this memo. The Ukrainians, and this just came across, are saying they may not show up to another round of talks that were set for Monday until they see that memorandum. So I guess my question is, what's in the memorandum, and why won't Russia hand it over so we can see what the conditions are?
Yeah, Kira, they need to. And what the memorandum is, it's the term I use. It's a term sheet, and we've got the Ukrainian term sheet. And that was a result of us coming out of Paris, then London. We came that, and we showed it to the president. There's 22 different terms on there.
He's still pushing this.
We think they're pretty good, and they're all reasonable. And we thought they were pretty good because neither side really liked them a lot. If neither side likes it, you're probably on the right track. And when President Trump talked to President Putin said, well, within a week, I'm going to give you we call it memorandum.
Okay.
And we haven't seen it yet. The Ukrainians have not seen it. As of when we came over here this afternoon, I asked the chief of staff to the Ukrainians if he had gotten Andrei Yermak, and he said he hasn't seen it at all. And I also talked to their lead negotiator, Rustem Umerov, who will be the lead negotiator on the next talks in Istanbul, and he hadn't seen it as well. And I always caution them, don't say things like that, because if you don't show up, part of life is showing up. And you need to show you're serious. And the thing we're driving to is get a ceasefire, because that stops the killing. If we get to the ceasefire, and the term I use is comprehensive. Comprehensive defined as air, land, sea infrastructure. Just stop it. As when I talked to Umerov recently, and he said, General Kellogg, you always ask me that question, and my answers are always very, very simple to you.
George, can you stop it? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, the memorandum was the process to end the war, meaning bring both parties back into a state of peace.
Right.
This is not what he's talking about.
No, that's the point. I mean, the memorandum, so as far as I understood it, was what are the terms of a final settlement? I mean, what are you looking for as part of the final settlement? But the point about the ceasefire doesn't get you anywhere.
Nope.
And he's still talking about the ceasefire. This is precisely after both Trump and Vance said that, well, let's not talk about the ceasefire. Let's talk about other things. Um, and Vance said that explicitly in Munich. He said that, well, we've lost our obsession with the ceasefire, and Trump himself doesn't talk about it, other than he just repeated that mantra. Ideally, we'll have a ceasefire, which means that he wasn't committed to it. And here is Kellogg is just repeating this. This is the talking point of Ukraine and the talking point of the coalition of the irrelevant of NATO. They are the ones who keep talking about this ceasefire.
Shooting, okay? Stop the shooting. I get it, okay? Ma'am, I understand. And that's what we want to get to. So we need to take what we get from the Russians. We need to get to what the Ukrainians have. We're going to try to merge them together and say, okay, these are points that are negotiable and these are points that are non-negotiable. Let's see where we get to when we have discussions next week when we're in Istanbul.
So just some of the notes that I took, there is this report that Putin has outlined these conditions for ending the war, including demanding Western leaders pledge in writing that NATO won't expand eastward. Is President Trump willing to make that kind of commitment to Putin that NATO won't expand?
Well, I think it's a fair concern. And we've said that repeatedly. Like we've said that to us, Ukraine coming into NATO is not on the table. And we're not the only country that says that. I can probably give you 4 of the countries in NATO, and it takes 32 of the 32 to allow you to come into NATO. And we've seen other countries say, we're not too sure about that. And that's one of the issues that Russia will bring up. And they're not just talking Ukraine. They're talking the country of Georgia. They're talking Moldova. They're talking, obviously, Ukraine. We're saying, okay.
This guy needs to take some caffeine, I mean, come on.
Yeah, he does. I mean,
this is really anemic. I mean,
he's showing his age here. I mean, he's 80 years old, but he is showing his age here. But it's nonetheless, I mean, what he said here was quite interesting, and it was something the Russians picked up. I want to show you a couple of slides later. They picked up on this and said, "Well, thank you very much that you finally." The American side has realized that this is an absolutely core demand of Russia. But you see, the journalist, she's not on the same page. I mean, this is annoying her that she should be saying this. These are just completely unreasonable demands of Putin.
We can stop the expansion of NATO coming close to your border. That's security concerns for them. But that's a presidential decision. It's not my decision to make. And these are things we go to the president and say, Mr. President, this is what we talked about. This is what everybody's willing to do. Are you willing to accept that? Are you willing to go with it? And then, hopefully, then we'll have a negotiation or discussion between President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky, and get an end state to this and stop the killing. The killing, honestly, Kerry, the numbers are absolutely horrific. I mean, when President Trump says, 5,000 a week, he's right.
Well, and President just said this week that Putin is playing with fire by refusing to engage in these ceasefire talks. And even as he's saying this, Russian forces are making small gains on the battlefield. So in Trump world, what happens when Putin plays with fire?
Well, I think it's a huge mistake to do that with Donald J. Trump. I think one of the things you should never underestimate Donald J. Trump.
All right, let's skip a little bit and move forward.
Or what the territory looks like on the ground with the 5, they call them oblast states, which is Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. And those are all areas that have got Russian troops in them. They don't have them fully occupied. The only oblast that they have really is Luhansk to the far north. But they're fighting hard in Donetsk, they're fighting hard in Zaporizhia and Kherson as well. And of course, they've got Crimea that they picked up in 2014. And these are the things that when we get into Istanbul next week, we'll sit down and talk. What does it look like? What are your feelings on it? And we'll have what we call the E3 with us. That is the national security advisors from Germany, France, and Great Britain. And they're kind of, when we were in London, they kind of helped us mold the term sheet for Ukraine. And
now, this question, these are national security advisors from Germany, the UK, and France. What exactly are they going to be doing there? Has anyone invited them to take part in these talks? I don't know. I mean, because Ukraine would probably love to have them in the meeting room, but I have my doubts that the Russians are going to accept them in the in the conference chamber. So what are they going to be doing in Istanbul?
Well, okay. Well, if you want to have a pan-European security conference, then let's have it.
Well, yeah, but that's a
I mean,
different.
yeah, this is backdoor stuff.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Again, I repeat, as far as I know, George, Ukraine isn't in NATO. If it were in NATO, I suppose that it would be appropriate to have other NATO countries at the table. But Ukraine isn't in the NATO. Keith Kellogg just said it's off the table. Okay. I thought this was bilateral talks. I don't think the Russians will do it. I think they'll
I
say,
don't think they'll accept them. Absolutely.
You're not invited to this. This is
They
our
can,
part.
no, 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 no. I mean, they can hang around outside. I mean, no one,
Sure, sure.
you know.
I had some Turkish coffee 2 days ago. It's really good. Okay.
It's true. The Turkish coffee is very good.
There as well, and we'll get their feedback as well.
And you talk about the areas of land, but then you look at some of the demands that Russia is making, and they're pretty extreme. I mean, disarming its military.
Why is she saying they're extreme?
Exactly. I mean,
I mean, I'm sorry. Are you Brzezinski in drag? I mean, who are you?
it is, it's an amazing feature, you know, the journalists completely now sort of abandon any sense of doing journalism and are completely identifying with a particular side. I mean, of course, we've seen this throughout in Ukraine, but they're completely, totally sort of identify, assume Ukraine is in the right, Russia was just, you know, horrific. And that doesn't even think, hey, I'm supposed to be providing information to the public. I'm supposed to be just here, you know, reporting on the negotiations, and that's all, not rooting for one side. I mean, this used to be a question that, oh, people didn't like it. I think it started during the first Gulf War when the journalists were criticized. Hey, you're completely identifying yourself with the American side. They said, well, we're American journalists. What do you expect us to do? I mean, that wasn't really an explanation, but you were completely identifying with the American side. That was in Gulf War I. Now you're identifying with the Ukrainian side. I mean, you don't even have the excuse of being, well, we're American. What do you expect?
Ukraine disarm its military, give up major cities, you know, giving how extreme these demands are. I mean, do you think Putin really wants peace when he starts throwing out those types of demands? That
I think it's in his best interest, Kara, that he goes to peace. I mean, look, we know.
But anyway, so he continues along the.
I always love when the stewards of empire can, with great clarity, determine the best interest of other countries. It's just amazing to me. It's in their best interest.
That's right. That's right. And so here, if we look at that what she was referring to was a story that appeared in Reuters earlier this week from anonymous sources, but nothing very interesting. Exclusive. Putin's demands for peace include an end to NATO enlargement, sources say.
This Falconbridge, he was a correspondent here in Moscow.
Oh, really?
Time, yeah.
Okay. Well, he seems quite knowledgeable. I mean, this is, you know, as Reuters articles go, I mean, this was actually quite a knowledgeable article. But nonetheless, there's nothing new about this. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum, and this goes back to December 2021. Of course, even before that, not only does Russia say no to any more NATO enlargement, they want this in writing. You know, no more of these oral pledges a la James Baker to Gorbachev. We want actually this a written commitment. So it says here, President Putin's conditions for ending the war in Ukraine include a demand that Western leaders pledge in writing to stop enlarging NATO eastwards and lift a chunk of sanctions on Russia, according to 3 Russian sources with knowledge of the negotiations. And then Putin is ready to make peace, but not at any price, said one senior Russian source. And then the 3 Russian sources says Putin wants a written pledge by major Western powers not to enlarge the US-led NATO alliance eastwards, shorthand for formally ruling out membership to Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova and other former Soviet republics. Russia also wants Ukraine to be neutral, some Western sanctions lifted, a resolution of the issue of the frozen Russian sovereign assets in the West, and protection for Russian speakers in Ukraine. And then there's a TASS responding to that interview by Kellogg. It says, Moscow happy, Putin's words about NATO non-expansion to East heard. Kremlin. And then Peskov says, this is something Russia welcomes, especially in the context of the intermediary role that Washington continues to play. The extraordinary deference that Russia now has towards Trump, they never say anything negative about.
Well, it's a bit rich for the spokesman for the Kremlin to say America's intermediary role.
Right.
I mean, that is just
it is a bit rich.
It's truly astounding, really.
It is astounding, but they're willing to flatter Trump. Okay, you want to say that you're an intermediary, then fine. We'll accept it. And even when Trump made these vituperative comments about Russia within the last few days, and Lavrov was asked about it, he said, well, I think President Trump is not really getting correct information. I think some people are misinforming him about what's really going on in Ukraine, which I think is incidentally true. I think he was clearly misinformed about that whole thing about the Russian attack last weekend. The Kremlin is happy that President Putin's explanations about the inadmissibility of the expansion of NATO to the east are being understood. And then President Putin has consistently communicated to his interlocutors, including American representatives, our position on the inadmissibility of NATO expansion to the east in terms of the strategic interests of the Russian Federation. Peskov said, commenting on U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg's assertion that Moscow's concern about expansion of the alliance to the east is justified. And we are glad that these explanations by the president are being met with understanding, including in Washington, and so on. And then here's another story in TASS, which is really what we know about these upcoming negotiations in Istanbul. And here it says that Russia is ready to present a memorandum detailing all aspects of eliminating the root causes of the Ukrainian crisis in Istanbul on June the 2nd. In turn, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiga said that Ukraine is interested in continuing negotiations with Russia in Istanbul. And then during his visit to Kiev, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan noted that he expects concrete results from these negotiations. And it says, meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg announced that representatives from the U.S., Germany, France, and the U.K. will be in Istanbul on June the 2nd. Uninvited guests.
Yeah, but I mean, to sum it up, everyone, I mean, it looks like Keith Kellogg is inviting people to somebody else's party.
That's right. And that's it. I mean, friend, you can show up. You're not going to get into the meeting, bro. I mean, you're not going to be there. It's a bilateral meeting. So it's what exactly is the point of their being there? And then Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced that Moscow is ready for the second round of negotiations with Kiev. And after speaking with the Turkish Foreign Minister, the top diplomat released a statement saying that the Russian side, as agreed, has promptly developed a corresponding memorandum. Moscow is prepared to present the memorandum during the second round of direct negotiations. And then Lavrov expressed hope in his statement that all those who are sincerely interested in the success of the peace process, and not just verbally, will support the holding of a new round. Well, of course,
just to sum up, everyone, this is a memorandum for the Ukrainian delegation. It's not for ABC News.
No. And that's absolutely right. I mean, you don't want to release it before the start of the negotiations. Just precisely because it's going to be leaked throughout the sort of the media within minutes, and everyone and his uncle will be responding on U.S., UK, French media denouncing your memorandum. I mean, what do you want to do that so that by the time the meeting takes place on Monday, everyone's already said, "Oh, this is unacceptable." So yeah, it's absolutely right that we presented there at the meet, and incidentally, that's what people normally do. When there's a conference, a peace conference, you present it there at the peace conference.
Well, I mean, if you're just going to release it, then why meet?
Why meet? And I am sure it's not a very complicated document. It only takes about 10 minutes for any experienced reader, experienced diplomat to sift through what's in the document. It's not like, well, I need to study it. I doubt whether it's a 300-page memorandum. I imagine it'll be quite short. Anyway, Ukrainian Defense Minister Umerov, who is leading the Ukrainian delegation in the talk, said Kiev is not opposed to meeting with the Russian side, but he's waiting for a memorandum from Moscow before beginning negotiations. This is going to be the drumbeat, like last week's drumbeat. It was Putin didn't show in Istanbul. He said he was going to show. He didn't show.
And before that, by Monday, a 30-day ceasefire, or else.
Or else, exactly. So now, whoa, they haven't sent the memorandum. They're obviously stalling. They're not serious about peace. They haven't presented the memorandum.
I haven't seen these people this angry since yesterday.
Exactly. And it says that Peskov called Ukraine's demand to immediately hand over the memorandum unconstructive. He emphasized that the main thing now is to continue the process of direct negotiations. And then we have again Ukraine Foreign Minister Andrei Sipka told reporters that he's interested in continuing the meetings, and the top diplomat reiterated that Kiev is waiting for the memorandum from Moscow, and stated that Ukraine has sent the Russian side its document outlining a vision for a ceasefire. Ukrainian Presidential Office head Andrei Yermak said that Kiev is ready to send a delegation to participate in the next round of talks.
Everyone, don't count on it happening. It's
Yeah.
not 100%. It's not 100%.
It's not 100%. I think that will show. I think they're being told by
I tend to
Americans that
believe
you better
it, but
show up.
yeah, well, Kellogg, I didn't know he was 80, but he really, from a quote unquote negotiator's position, he shouldn't have said some of the things he said.
Right. Anyway, here, and then we have this is Turkish minister en route to Ukraine. Fidan informed the press that during his official visit to Russia, he had presented Turkey's views on the realistic parameters necessary for achieving a ceasefire. And then, anyway, it goes on. At a joint press conference of the Ukrainian foreign minister on May the 30th, Fidan said that a peaceful settlement in Ukraine can be achieved within a year, and expressed hope that at the meeting in Istanbul on June the 2nd, the technical work will largely be completed, and it will be possible to complete the Istanbul negotiation process and hold a meeting between the presidents of Turkey, the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. So Turkey is going to be right in there, in the thick of it.
Yeah, well, that is a remote possibility, but my sense is that would only be under the conditions where they know exactly where they're going and where they want to end up. Right. That is the only and I think that's really quite remote at this point.
I agree, but this is where what the Russians have said, which is the Kremlin names conditions for Ukraine talks between Putin, Zelensky, and Trump. And then Peskov emphasized that Putin is fundamentally in favor of high-level contacts. Direct talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Zelensky on the Ukrainian settlement can only take place after results in negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian delegations. That's the whole point. That has been a fairly consistent position on the part of the Russians, which is that you have to make some progress in these negotiations between the teams of negotiators before you can get to the kind of heads of state, heads of government level
Well,
meet.
and George just said it. I don't think you're aware of it, but these
Right,
negotiations. Don't commingle it with U.S.-Russia
right,
bilateral relations. These are
right.
separate. Now, they can work in tandem. They can, but that it's not a necessary condition.
No,
Okay.
no, it's not. I
And
think
there are so many that are giving the public the impression that they are commingled. They are not.
no, they're not. But you'd have to say if this isn't resolved, then I don't really see much likelihood of any
Well, and
progress on
that's
U.S.-Russia bilateral relations.
exactly, and that is the that is unspoken from the Russian side.
Right,
That's unspoken. We've never heard that this is a deal breaker. We haven't heard that.
right, right, right. But in this case, about his conversation, Putin, Trump, and Zelensky, which is what Trump seems to want to do, he said, "Yeah, we can do that, but there has to be some progress in the negotiations. Otherwise, there isn't going to be any such meeting." And then,
Meaning progress, everyone. What does that mean? That means we see the light at the end of the
right,
tunnel.
exactly. That's exactly right. Rather than just making declarations, pointless declarations that are just simply unacceptable. Putin has repeatedly said that he's fundamentally in favor of high-level contacts, which are certainly needed, but they must be prepared, and results must first be achieved in direct negotiations between the delegations of the two countries beforehand. If such results are achieved, and when they are achieved, then of course there may be talk of high-level contacts. And then this was the Trump truth. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean, really bad. He's playing with fire.
This
Uh,
is so unhelpful.
it's very unhelpful. It's very,
It's
very unhelpful.
very, because it's not substantive, it's not thinking strategically, it's reacting to a news flow,
Yep.
it's reacting to he's reacting to pushback against him.
Yep.
George and I have talked about this. This is very anomalous because Trump is usually, for good reasons and bad reasons, always has a jump on everyone.
He has
He's
a
always
jump on
playing, and he's playing catch up here.
right. He
This
has a
is
jump.
so unhelpful.
He has a jump on it, and he's very good at keeping his options open. That very discursive way he has of answering questions when he doesn't really answer questions, he just filibusters. He's actually quite an effective technique because he really doesn't commit himself to anything. He doesn't blurt things out in the way that Keith Kellogg blurts things out. So in a way, by just not really talking about this or that event, he can then leave it and say, "Yeah, I want an overall settlement. That's my goal. My goal is for the killings to end." And that's precisely, whatever bad thing happened this morning, that's precisely why I'm trying to end this. But
This is
when you do this, this provides fodder for the media because the media they pounce on this and say, yeah, 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 yeah. When are you gonna do something? When are you
when are
gonna
you going to
start
do
imposing the
something
sanctions?
when are you going to do something really bad?
Exactly. Yeah. When? Tomorrow, please. Um, and this was the previous truth was also he's gone absolutely crazy. Um, and then this was a statement that Trump made the other day in the Oval Office, but where he actually was quite subtle. So if we look at this, he says Trump gives Putin 2 weeks for action on Ukraine. And then he says, Donald Trump says,
I'm sorry. Can you go
yeah,
back real quick? Okay. U.S. President very disappointed with Russian counterparts' escalation. I'm sorry. The original the title as relationship phrase.
yeah,
What does that mean?
exactly.
Okay. Again, this is mixing apples with oranges here. And this is what they want. They want Ukraine to be the poison pill.
Right. I mean, what this they have this narrative. They have this narrative that Trump loves Putin, and they have this great relationship, going back 10 years, he really likes Putin. They really are bosom buddies. And so when they say relationship phrase, well, finally, maybe Trump is giving up on his good friend. He's finally seen the light. Maybe his good friend really isn't such a good friend after all. That's their story. And the problem why when Trump sends out these statements is that he's just giving ammunition to his political opponents, because now they're saying, yeah, why aren't you doing more? Come on, get with the program. What about Lindsey Graham's sanctions package? Why don't you get behind it?
What he needs to do, it's very simple and straightforward. Let's let the process play out. Let's let the process play out.
Right.
Okay. There are negotiations going on between two parties, not with the media, not with me.
Right.
They are the two parties. Let's let the process play out. Next question.
Yeah, I agree. And then here, Donald Trump says American efforts to bring Russia and Ukraine to peace are going fine, but appears cognizant that Russian President Vladimir Putin may be only pretending to engage in good faith. He's not cognizant at all. I mean, he's just, says, I don't know. I mean, so, we'll see. But he says, he's cognizant, as if somehow he's aware that Putin is only pretending to engage in good faith.
No, this is Politico, right?
This is Politico.
This is what Politico's opinion
Exactly.
is. They don't know what Trump's opinion is, okay?
It
appears.
The interesting thing is, when I say, you may not like Putin, you may not like Russia, but he's certainly engaging in good faith. They've stated their position, I don't know, 1 million times over the years. I mean,
particularly,
they've stated their position.
Look, everyone, the Russian position has changed almost zero since June or July of last year.
Right.
Wasn't it last summer? That's when Putin came out and basically said, yeah, I think so. It was,
July and the 24th.
July,
yeah. But even before that, they were setting out what their objectives were in Ukraine.
Well, Istanbul in
all of that.
March and April 2022.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to say it's not engaging in good faith will suggest, they said one thing and then they went back on their word. They've never gone back on their word. They've never promised anything other than what they're doing now. So, it's not engaging in good faith. Who isn't engaging in good faith are those who are calling for a 30-day ceasefire, who don't really want a peace, but just want to use this 30 days to re-energize, rearm, and re-engage in the field of war.
Is miserable Mertz, is he a good faith actor? He's talking about giving
long-range missiles,
long-range missiles to Ukraine as there's a quote-unquote peace process going on in Istanbul. Is that a good faith actor?
That's right, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He's talking about a ceasefire, and you're saying you're going to start building these missiles in Ukraine, long-range missiles, 2,500-kilometer missiles. He's going to be building in Ukraine. We'll find out whether or not he's tapping us along or not. And if he is, we'll respond a little bit differently, but it will take about a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Another mistake.
Yeah, I agree. They seem to want to do something, but until the document is signed, I can't tell you, nobody can. And then I can say this, I'm very disappointed at what happened a couple of nights now, where people were killed in the middle of what you would call a negotiation. He continued adding later, when I see rockets being shot into cities, that's no good. We aren't going to allow it.
We aren't going.
What are you going to do?
Another mistake.
Very much a mistake. I agree.
Because you can't control it. Don't weigh in on something you can't control.
Right. That's right. And then when asked about his decision to not impose new sanctions on Russia, because they're always going to keep asking him this. He said, if I think I'm close to getting a deal, I don't want to screw it up by doing that. Let me tell you, I'm a lot tougher than the people you're talking about, but you have to know when to use that. If I think it's going to hurt a deal, this isn't my war. This is Biden's war, Zelensky's war, Putin's war. This isn't Trump's war.
Just because you say it over and over again doesn't mean it's not true.
Right. The problem for Trump is that unless he is careful, he is going to get himself into exactly the same situation as he got into during his first term. I don't think he wanted to take an anti-Russian course during his first term, but he kind of gave away the store and seemed to, reluctantly go along with what the what his enemies wanted, and he started imposing sanctions on Russia. He didn't
And
want to
that's
do it,
what
but he ended up imposing sanctions on Russia.
And that's exactly what we call now the deep state wants. They
Right.
manage you. They manage you. They steer you in a direction where they
Right.
want. Okay. And Russiagate was the catalyst for it.
You're right. Right. That's right. What was remarkable about the sanctions that he imposed is that those sanctions were punishment for Russia for allegedly interfering in the 2016 election, which something that he denied. He actually never believed it because, of course, it undermined his legitimacy. I mean, if you say that the Russians stole that election for you, that kind of undermines your legitimacy. So he ended up sanctioning Russia for doing something that he denied that they had done. So, he could end up in the same place.
Exactly, exactly. And we know the snake in the garden, Marco Rubio, is always hovering.
Right,
Okay. I
right.
mean, it's only a matter of time. This is my opinion. It's only a matter of time before he stabs Trump in the back. I'm sorry. I can't think differently.
No, no, no. That's right. I mean, he's holding his
Oh,
fire.
he's Trump is not getting proper information. Well, I guess Marco Rubio's job as national security advisor, isn't it?
Right.
To give information to the president to make
Yeah.
decisions.
That,
I
that, that,
wonder why he's not getting information.
why he's not getting information. No, you're absolutely right. And we talked about this the other day when he was caught by surprise by this question from a reporter. Hey, the Russians are saying that Putin's helicopter was caught in a storm of drones. Maybe that was why the Russians reacted so strongly. Oh, well, maybe then that might explain why the Russians reacted. So Trump was caught by surprise. He hadn't heard this. Well, isn't that exactly what your national security advisor needs to be telling you before you say anything? Hey,
Look,
the Russian
look,
general was saying that it was Putin's helicopter was caught in a storm of drones.
if you really, really want to give it to Marco Rubio, fire him now,
Right,
okay?
right,
Because that this critical time between now and the midterms, a lot of things can happen,
right,
okay? And JD Vance will just have a smile from ear to ear because these guys are, sharp elbowing it
right,
all the way,
right,
okay? Again, for a guy that ran The Apprentice, looking for talent, Trump is hopeless in this regard.
right,
Hopeless.
right, right,
Okay.
right. Yeah,
Like I said last time we talked, George. Okay, Chaz Friedman is an old guy. Okay, and
right,
I have enormous amount of respect for him. You could talk to him on a secure line, where they spend all this money and should be secure from his own home. Just ask him, Chaz, what do you think about this? It would be, not that it would be the be all and would be the decision, but I mean, just like a totally articulate, smart, gray-haired guy saying,
right,
"Well, my 50 years of experience, Mr. President, tells me the following."
right,
Okay, and I'm pretty sure, considering Friedman had, since he was ambassador, he probably has the option of having intelligence briefing even to this day. Okay. So he
right.
could be in the loop. I'm not cheerleading for one person here, but there are alternatives out there. You let these vapors into your office. What do you expect?
No, I think so. Um, and I think, I mean, as a result of he's getting bad advice, he's getting this, not having a proper national security advisor, exactly the kind of person you want, somebody who's actually providing you with real information, not just regurgitated claptrap from dubious sources. You can't have Rubio in that role. He has to appoint somebody that he trusts. All presidents, all successful presidents had that. Nixon had that with Kissinger. And if they're not doing their job, then you fire them. Reagan went through, I think, was it 5, 6 national security advisors? They weren't doing the job. They weren't providing him with the proper intelligence. And Trump knows this. I mean, remember the Helsinki, when that Helsinki summit in 2018, and they discussed the issue of election interference, and Putin said, well, look, why don't our intelligence people and your intelligence people meet up around a conference table? You present your intelligence findings, we'll present ours, and then see what we can agree upon on this issue of election interference. And Trump said, hey, that's a good idea. And he went before the media and said, I think it's a really good proposal. Why don't we do that? And he came under attack immediately, and he dropped this plan, something that would have been a very successful and would have been good for him. It would have strengthened his position. Said, okay, well, let the intelligence people sort this out, as to what really happened in 2016. And then he was just thrown off track, and then started imposing these idiotic sanctions.
Anyway, to be honest with you, George, I have no reason to be optimistic, okay, about this, because this is just being rolled out as another media product, okay? Keith Kellogg is obviously a spoiler, okay? He's obviously representing not the United States, but he's representing Ukraine and the coalition of the irrelevant. And you gave us a preamble to everything, how they rolled Trump in his first administration, and they're rolling him again.
Right.
It seems pretty obvious to me.
Right.
And he has this very, very weak link. I mean, he's brought poison into his own house. Marco Rubio, considering what Trump said on the tarmac, that he didn't know about that. Well, that's a cause for firing right then and there. Okay. I mean, he should have just, tweeted it, or,
Right.
truth it. Sorry, thank you, Marco. Enjoy your
Right.
life. Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this has been a bad week for Trump, because up until this week, I thought he was actually being quite shrewd in the way he was keeping his options open, which is what you want to do. Just keep.
Yeah, but George, this
your
is like,
options open.
the ducks being killed by
Yeah, exactly. By the
Novichok.
Novichok,
Okay,
yeah.
this is like his daughter. Oh, there's a sarin.
Babies, the babies.
Sarin is being used. Assad is gassing his own people. Doesn't it sound familiar, everybody?
No, it does. It does. It does. It's not been a good week, and that's why many in the media are purring with delight. They think we've got him. This is going to be his first term redux, and then he's going to be playing on our team in no time at all. He's going to get behind the Lindsey Graham sanctions, and if he does that, he will have completely failed. It's going to fail. The war will go on, and he will look very, very ineffectual. Far more so than during his first term, because at least that way you could say, well, that's just his first term. Maybe in the second term, he'll have more flexibility. This is his one and only shot. There's not going to get another shot. And,
but everybody is going to be, but everybody around the world is going to be watching. What do you think people in Tehran are thinking? What do you think the people in Beijing are thinking? This guy is not serious. He's not well versed in events.
Right.
He's overreactive. He changes his mind a lot. I mean, this could be, the epicenter, or one of a few that will just totally derail him.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, he can be thwarted
Right.
with all the huff and puff that he has, and I'm sorry, the clowns he has surrounded himself with. I mean, it's just a perfect storm of failure. All right. But again, unsolicited advice here. Let the Russians and Ukrainians work it out.
Right.
Calm down, everybody. I'm not going to answer any of these questions because we're not part of the negotiations. Keith Kellogg should have been fired long ago. What does the United States need an envoy to Ukraine for?
Not at all. No, I agree entirely. I think his stance should be, let's the negotiations work themselves out. Then we'll see how they go. Why are you giving these kind of artificial deadlines? Oh, it's going to be a week, 2 weeks. Why? Why does it have to be?
How's that worked out for you already? How's that worked out for you?
Right. It's not exactly. I mean, these are completely pointless. Because all that's going to happen when you say, a week or 2 weeks is they're going to come back at you and say, hey, well, the 2 weeks are up. What are you going to do now, Mr. President? Are you ready now to impose your sanctions? And then what's he going to say? Well, let's give it another week or two. And I mean, you then come across looking ridiculous. It's the easiest thing for him to do now is just simply say, well, I'm waiting for these negotiations and see where.
I have a question for you, George, and it's a genuine one. Why doesn't he clamp down on the European leaders? I mean, they are the freeloaders of NATO. They don't have any military muscle to speak of. Okay,
Right.
that could change over 10 years. That could. Okay, I
Right.
doubt it, but it could. But they don't have the heft or the punch.
No.
Why doesn't he just call them?
It's a
Get
very
on a Zoom call and say, you guys are very, very unhelpful. Okay, you say you want peace. No one believes you, okay?
right.
But we're going to give that a chance, okay? So button it up. But he
Right.
won't do it.
No, I agree. And particularly as he doesn't like the Europeans, he thinks with some justice that the Europeans are screwing the United States over. The United States has been subsidizing their economies for decades.
Their security for
Their
decades.
security for decades. And in other words, they're subsidizing their welfare states, that they're running massive trade surpluses with the United States, which means, again, that's U.S. industries leaving the United States. He doesn't like them. He has none of the sentimental attachment to NATO and the transatlantic relationship, and none of that. So it's the easiest thing for him to do, and particularly as he knows they hate you, they hate him. They were plotting against him. People like Macron, Keir Starmer, explicitly his own Labour Party was plotting against him in the 24 election. So exactly, why can't you just say, look, just stay out of this? This is let this try and be negotiated. You are not helpful, and he knows perfectly well they're acting as spoilers because they don't want a settlement. They want this war.
They don't want, see, again, it gets down to this kind of sophomoric politics. They don't want Trump to get a win.
Right.
And there's no principles here.
Right.
There are no values here.
No.
This is tough and tumble, crude politics. We don't want him to win.
Right.
Another 50,000 Ukrainians die in the next 6 weeks. So what?
Well, they don't care. They don't care about that.
They don't care.
But that's right. They're absolutely committed to continuation of the war, and they think that they saw what Trump was doing. They were very nervous about the arrival of Trump. They thought Trump might end this war, so they pretended that they also wanted to end this, something they hadn't done all this time. They hadn't done anything to end it. So we're for peace. We want to end it. So they came up with this ceasefire. We want to ceasefire. And it becomes this drumbeat that the media then pick up. Ceasefire. They know perfectly well that the ceasefire is a scam, but they think they can roll Trump into buying into the idea of a ceasefire, and then they can have their war continue.
I'm not on Twitter very often. I always say that. But yesterday, when I went on, and I hit home, so what's the freshest and all that. And I don't remember who posted it, but this war has to go on until the middle of 2026. At that point, the Russian economy will collapse. I just like,
Yeah.
based on what? Go to the IMF, go to the World Bank, look at the projections for all OSCE countries.
Right.
Russia's on top.
Right.
So the IMF or the World Bank, they're lackeys of Russia too?
Right.
Okay.
They have to.
I mean, what is the best performing currency in the world?
Right. But they have to.
The Russian
Their argument that
ruble.
what they need to do here is to suggest they have to present a plan for victory. Because ultimately, with all the time, this we have to plan for victory. The plan for victory is that at some point, Russia will collapse. Some point, Putin will come to the negotiating table. In other words, Putin will capitulate at some point. So that's what the economy will collapse. The people will turn on Putin. They won't be able to take these casualties anymore. All of this is just simply pie in the sky. I mean, it's not a strategy. It's just a wish. Your Christmas present. Your Christmas wish. I want what I want Santa Claus to bring me this Christmas. I mean, that's all it is. But at least it provides them with some rationale for what is
Or
basically a
hope.
thoroughly immoral
Hope.
policy.
It gives them hope.
That's right.
But you can't make policy based on hope.
Exactly.
Okay? The battle of Stalingrad was not based on hope on either side.
Right. Exactly.
It was carnage. That was the strategy.
Right.
Carnage. And who can withstand the most carnage? That's not hope.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Or our European values will save us and save the world? Well, George and I have made a career out of
Yeah.
dissing that because those values simply don't exist.
Right.
They're not dealing in reality. Okay.
Right. That's right.
This time next year, the Russian economy, it'll be from the ruble to ruble. Okay. We're going to keep hearing this.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, to put a bow on top of it here, of course, George and I are going to wait until Monday.
Monday.
Of course.
I mean, I think there will be talks. I'm not sure they'll get very far, but I think there will be talks, and we're going to have the meeting of the fatuous, the UK, France, Germany, hovering around the conference room.
Warming. It's warming.
It's warming.
Yeah, but I mean, they're like gnats on the back of a fly at this point. Okay, to be honest with you, I was trying to think of a metaphor because I know George is a big tennis fan. You know, and what is the minor version of tennis? It's table tennis. It's ping pong, and I think that's what we've gotten over the last 2 weeks. It's a lot of little.
Right.
It's a great game. I liked it as a young man, but there's nothing bold.
Right.
There's nothing strategic here.
No, there's not. No, there's not. No.
All right, everyone. It is Friday. Monday is coming up. We will be doing a live stream. As usual, we'll be caught in the middle of it all. George and I will have eat our tasks. Al Jazeera, antiwar.com, they don't update so quickly, but well, we'll keep an eye on and what's going on. Maybe we'll get lucky. Probably won't. Okay.
Right.
But all right, everybody, this is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Buddy is just reminding me that he hasn't even heard the word tip jar during this entire.
Exactly, but he's saying I'm really getting bored out of my mind, because the only subject that interests me and should interest humanity at large is the condition of the tip jar. And since no one is saying anything about the tip jar, then he's saying this is all just pointless hot air. So I never like to be in Buddy's bad graces, because Buddy can be very ferocious. He's got very strong jaws. So if you have anything, silver, crypto, gold is good. Buddy likes gold. Into the tip jar, all of it. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and above all, we'll keep Buddy quiet for a little while longer. It's going to be very hard. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.